I had one colleague who had left the school, but a student wet themselves in his lesson, a Year 7 student, which obviously is going to be extremely damaging for that pupil.
Most of the special educational needs that children have can be accommodated within the mainstream classroom if there is enough support there.
It was even suggested to me, had I considered homeschooling. I just remember looking at her in disbelief. I literally cannot believe you're even suggesting that. This is your way out, is it?
Suspensions and exclusions from school in England are at their highest level since 2006. Last year, the number of suspensions from English state schools rose to nearly 1 million, with children with special educational needs 3 times more likely to be suspended. At the same time, teachers in England are leaving the profession in unprecedented numbers, with the current vacancy rate 6 times higher than in 2010. Strict behavioural policies, sometimes called zero tolerance, are used by many academy schools across the country. They've been facing protests from teachers and parents.
Parents and teachers know schools need discipline in order to function. Students can't succeed in chaos. But can a school be too strict? I've investigated one school in East London where children, particularly those with special educational needs, have been left feeling demoralised and dejected, where teachers have complained before quitting en masse and parents are up in arms.
Haggerston School in London is one of thousands of English schools which voluntarily converted from local authority control to an academy chain, despite having received good in its previous Ofsted rating. Last year, teachers at the school took strike action and more than 100 parents signed a letter complaining about the school's excessive use of detentions and hierarchical management culture. Journalists at Times Radio were alerted to complaints from parents and teachers. They alleged changes introduced by the academy chain were causing an exodus of staff and a decline in staff and student mental health. Staff complaints ranged over many issues, including workload, management culture, and changes to the curriculum. We spoke to 3 teachers currently or formerly employed at the school since its takeover by the academy chain Community Schools Trust, or CST. They've asked to remain anonymous, fearing reprisals over speaking to us.
2 of the teachers alleged that the school was giving excessive detentions for minor transgressions, adding to teachers' workload and demoralising the students.
Times Radio has seen copies of the school's behavioural policies, which list many causes for detentions, including not being silent in line-up and having incorrect equipment. Children are also punished for not following what's called the slant procedure, in which they must sit straight and face the front in silence while tracking the teacher's movements.
You were quite worried about the way that the children were being treated and how that has changed.
It just feels like schools are becoming, or this school has become, more of like a boot camp, which it wasn't when I started. I think we were asking the students to do lots of things on a daily basis that we as adults would never do. So sitting straight, hands on the desks, following whoever is speaking constantly, immediately picking up a pen, never having a break, walking in silence to lessons in single file on a line, getting detentions for an hour if they don't complete homework.
Times Radio has seen internal emails sent to staff from the academy chain's leadership promoting discipline at the school, one of which included a comparison with China. This video was sent to teachers in an email from the academy chain's deputy CEO, marvelling at the children's perfect synchronization and encouraging teachers to reflect on what level of discipline would be required to achieve these children's precision. It prompted one teacher in the email chain to highlight the high suicide rates among Chinese school students linked to academic pressure. One of the teachers we spoke to told us,
"A number of children have seen their behaviour worsen since CST took over, especially the more challenging students who often just need to be listened to instead of being sanctioned, which only escalates their behaviour. The children with special educational needs have really struggled under the new system. The approach to discipline is horrible. A senior member in charge of behaviour at the school would scream at the children to the extent some of the other teachers complained about him."
The school educates roughly 1,000 students in a year. Data obtained by Freedom of Information shows that in just a 4-month period during the last school year, the school issued 2 permanent exclusions, 122 suspensions, nearly 900 full days spent in internal exclusion rooms isolated from the rest of the school, and just under 30,000 corrections, which each come with next-day detentions. The most common reasons for corrections were in-class behaviour, being disorderly during line-up, incomplete homework, lateness, and incorrect equipment. Persistent disruptive behaviour was listed as a reason for both of the permanent exclusions and 95% of suspensions. Children with special educational needs, or SEND, accounted for approximately 10% of corrections and in-school exclusions and 20% of suspensions, despite available data for the previous year showing the school's proportion of children with SEND was under 5%. The teachers we spoke to said the school's protocols for issuing passes for children to use the toilet was convoluted and rigidly enforced, which when coupled with long queues during break time could lead to children not being able to use the toilet for 4 hours or more on end.
Some children have weak bladder issues but no diagnosis. I can literally see them shaking in their seats and pinching themselves in discomfort. The school does nothing about it. I witnessed a Year 7 and Year 8 child wet themselves because of being made to wait so long. It was so humiliating for those students.
We were also told that many experienced teachers left the school over the changes being implemented, not only in relation to discipline, but also the new academic curriculum introduced.
One of the teachers we spoke to told us he left the school for several reasons, including increased workload and changes to the behavioural policies, but primarily over what he felt were unethical curriculum changes made by the academy chain, including the fixing of students into sets based on performance.
From the way CST dictates how we teach specific curriculums, some students, for instance, that probably didn't do well in their Year 6 results and were put in lower sets were only taught foundation content. So they're not taught the whole curriculum, and that already puts them in a disadvantaged position. A very rigid setting doesn't allow students to move around and therefore creates a lot of stress on the students, but also acts as a sort of deterrent to their performance. And again, usually those students that are unincentivized are usually those that are disadvantaged anyway. The curriculum is simply designed to build an exam factory and obtain really high results through mnemonics.
Times Radio also spoke to several parents at the school who alleged the academy chain's toilet policy made their children scared to go into school. We have seen a copy of an official complaint letter sent to the school's Board of Governors and signed by over 120 parents, alleging an excessive use of detentions for trivial reasons, such as picking up a pen and turning round in class.
One parent we spoke to pulled her child out of the school because she believed it failed to adequately adapt its detention policy, which she said led to his isolation and eventual self-harm by hitting his head off the desk. Her child has an education, health and care plan which provides special educational support for diagnoses affecting his physical and mental capacity to engage with the school curriculum. She's asked to remain anonymous to avoid her child's potential identification due to his traumatic experience at the school.
By the Christmas of Year 7, I don't know how many detentions he'd had. And I know that it was very common in the school for all children to receive multiple detentions while they're literally breaking them into their rules and regulations. Some of them for the most ridiculous things. So he had one for drinking his water too noisily. He had one for turning around in the classroom to ask somebody else something.
Claire told us her child went several months with zero adjustment of the academy chain's detention and toilets policies due to a significant delay in receiving his SEND passport, a document administered by school management, despite their knowledge of his support needs and EHCP before term started.
Toilet breaks were not allowed. If a child, like my son, was asking to go to the toilet, that's what he needed to do, and he takes things quite literal. So he then had an accident, which still haunts him.
Claire said that as her son continued to accrue detentions for breaking with the school's policies on classroom behaviour, he was increasingly isolated from other students.
She told us he was placed in a special zone away from the playground every lunchtime, received detentions in the isolated exclusion zone lasting from 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m, and in a clear breach of the school's own SEND policies, was the only one in his year group left out of a school trip to the Olympic Park.
I was told he wasn't allowed to go on the trip. There wasn't staff to support going on public transport to the park. I said I could come along if it was about supervision or support in that way, and they said no, that's not what we do. And then on the last day of term, I was told it would be better for him to stay at home, so it wasn't an exclusion on paper. I don't know how they recorded it, but he didn't even have his last day of Year 7 in school.
Baroness Mary Bousted is the chair of the Teaching Commission and has worked in education policy for over 20 years. Her commission published a report this summer on driving forces behind the record numbers of teachers leaving the profession.
Certainly pupil behaviour is an issue. Certainly teachers are reporting that pupil behaviour is getting worse. And that obviously makes teaching every day in schools, if you're having to deal with disruptive and bad behaviour every day, that's very stressful. Teachers leave because of overwork. 85% of teachers say they're exhausted at the end of every working day. I was a teacher for over a decade, and I was a strict teacher. And that didn't mean my classroom was an unhappy place. It just meant that there were very clear consequences for not doing your homework and not concentrating. And I do think that children of all ages need firm boundaries.
What is the impact on students of having severe policies on behaviour at school?
I do think that this zero tolerance approach, if it continues for too long, it can start to become unreasonable. And children can be sanctioned and censured for minor transgressions, or just things that they forgot, or just not having exactly the right uniform. For example, might be having a logo on their socks, without any sense of what it's taken these children to get to school, what's happening in their home lives. It's as though in school they have to become automatons and all exactly the same. They need to be allowed to make mistakes, just like we make mistakes at work and in our personal lives. And if there's a shortcut, which is just, behaviour and the curriculum is tied down in every way, then schools don't become the place where children and young people learn what it is to be that wider member of society. And I think that's a problem.
Every child will benefit from the same core national curriculum following the Curriculum and Assessment Review. This bill will convert the duty to issue academy orders into a power to better deliver high and rising standards for all children.
Some of Labour's promises on education were to scale back the freedoms afforded to academy chains, to halt forced academisation, and to bring multi-academy trusts under the Ofsted inspection regime.
We asked the Department for Education and the Community Schools Trust for their response to this investigation.
We set extremely high standards when it comes to behaviour and learning. We expect students to be well behaved and ready to learn when they are in our classrooms. As a trust, we are in the second best in the country for GCSE exam results for disadvantaged students. The majority of the students under our care are from disadvantaged backgrounds. Our families can't afford private tutors to help their children through exams. That's why we offer it for free. Despite serving some of the most deprived communities in the country, our students achieve among the best exam results. Good grades at GCSE are linked to better life outcomes, better careers, better financial outcomes, better mental health. We do not comment on matters regarding individual students or teachers. We encourage parents or employees with concerns to contact the school directly.
Every child deserves to learn in a safe and calm classroom, which is why we are tackling the root causes of poor behaviour, including providing access to mental health support in every school, and launching our new attendance and behaviour hubs, which will directly support the 500 schools that need the most help. We're also reforming the SEND system to ensure support is available before issues escalate, including through £740 million to create more specialist school places, a new inclusion-centred training curriculum, and earlier intervention for speech and language needs.
CST says tough rules bring better prospects, and although they declined our request for interview, they pointed to the good grades that they insist they achieve for their students.
We have seen Haggerston's academic results for 2024/25, and there have been marginal improvements at GCSE on the previous year. However, the percentage of students achieving AAB at A level declined from 19% to 4% in the same period, and the percentage of results ranging from B to A star at A level declined from 45% to 37%. Compared to 2022/23, before Haggerston's takeover by CST, some GCSE results have stayed consistent or improved marginally, but the percentage of students achieving grades 9 to 5 in English and maths declined significantly.
The conflict we've seen at this school is not a unique one. Other academy chains have faced questions for establishing their own curricula and their own procedures on discipline.
However, the level of criticism of Haggerston School and CST we have heard suggests they need to do more to reassure their staff and the parents and children they serve.